I hope that everyone can hear me. I got information that we can start now. So dear attendees, distinguished guests, colleagues and friends, it's my great pleasure to open this event. As you all know, this is a roundtable discussion on the topic of ethics in business and policy making. My name is Jovan Bliznakovski. I'm the Deputy Director of the Institute for Sociological, Political and Juridical Research, which is a part of the St. Cyril and Methodius University in Skopje, Macedonia. Our institute is actually the oldest social science institute in the country. We have a long-term tradition of research in sociology, political science, legal sciences, and more recently also in organizational sciences. The institute is actually the host institution of this event, as you also probably know. Before proceeding, I would like to offer my gratitude towards the European Marketing and Management Association for organizing this roundtable, and particularly to the president of EUMMAS, Professor Mile Vasic, who I believe is the most responsible for the opportunity that we're having today to discuss a topic which seems always relevant. That's what we'll discuss today, ethics in business and policy making, on the background of two keynote speeches, which are due to be delivered by my dear and respected colleagues from the Institute, three professors from the Department of Organizational Science will be leading the panel. We're going to hear a discussion between Professor Mirjana Borota Popovska and Professor Vesna Zabijakin Chatleska, while the roundtable itself will be moderated by another member of the same Department of Organizational Sciences, Professor Marija Topuzovska Latkovic. Following the keynote speeches, we'll have an open discussion, so I would ask all attendees to remain patient during the keynote speeches, and then we'll have an opportunity for exchange of opinions and ideas on the topic. But prior to the actual discussion, I would also like to welcome two distinguished guests to deliver their welcoming remarks. We have here with us Dr. Dina Yacout, which is the Vice President of the EUMMAS Advisory Board and Vice President of the EUMMAS Women's Forum. She's filling in today for Professor Călin Oros, who was announced for this event, but unfortunately couldn't join us today due to other professional obligations. And we also have together with us here Professor Pande Lazarevski, who is President of the EUMMAS Honorary Board and another member of the Institute for Sociological, Political and Juridical Research. Dr. Yacout and Professor Lazarevski, the floor is yours to deliver your welcoming remarks. I'm not sure if Dr. Yacout is hearing us.
I hear you. I hear it's just an issue of internet. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Catch up what you're saying. Sorry for this.
If not, we can hear Professor Pande, which as far as I see is also missing right now. So this is quite unfortunate.
I am already here. I can hear you, but tell me, I guess I missed something.
You're free to deliver your welcoming remarks. So please do so.
Okay. So good evening to all of you, and welcome to our precious roundtable. It's a very interesting topic, the ethics in business and policy making. I would like to welcome every and each one of you on behalf of Professor Dr. Călin Oros, President of the Advisory Board in EUMMAS. I am Dr. Dina Yacout. I'm the Vice President of the Advisory Board and the Women Forum in EUMMAS. I would like to salute Professor Dr. Mirjana Vasic, the President of EUMMAS, and Professor Dr. Pande Lazarevski, the President of the Honorary Board. And I would like to welcome Professor Dr. Mirjana and Professor Dr. Marija and Professor Dr. Vesna. I would like to elaborate just a small remark about the business ethics. Is a very important topic. It's a very interesting one. And whenever the time is running and the time is passing, business ethics always remain as a very interesting and sustainable topic to be discussed on a regular or a periodic scale. As business ethics will ensure that the business policies and the practices are done in place, and it adds definitely a value towards the loyalty and the retention of the employees in the corporate. And it definitely guarantees that there are acceptable behaviors beyond governmental control. So I'm not going to take much in talking. I would like to leave the professors and the people of the expertise take it from here. So welcome to everybody, and welcome to Dr. Lydia, the president of the Women Forum as well. And following up with you, and I'm just present for anything you might be in need of. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yacout. Professor Pande, please go ahead.
Thank you. And first of all, I want to use this opportunity to wish you a very successful and peaceful new year. I'm glad that we are together around very important topic related to ethics, business, and public policies that are designed as something unavoidable in the development of appropriate business climate. In addition to this, just a couple of introductory words, I want to emphasize that, as it was, as you know, it is a joint endeavor done by the Institute for Sociological, Political, and Juridical Research at Cyril and Methodius University in Skopje. And from this research institute are coming our three distinguished experts in the field: the moderator, Professor Topuzovska, Latkovic, and professors Borota, Popovska, and Professor Zabijakin, Chatleska. Anyhow, it will be interesting to hear their presentations, but also a discussion that will be developed, I expect, after their presentation. I don't want to take too much of your time, and I'm just once again willing to say that this is our first activity this year, and on behalf of the Honorary Board, I wish you all success during the year, and also especially I want to give a credit to the president and initiator of the EUMMAS, Professor Mile Vasic, for his efforts and all achievements that he reached. Something that at the very beginning was envisioned to be European, relatively small organization. Now it is worldwide spread it on all continents with universities, research centers, business associations, and other relevant international organizations. But not to talk too much, because talking too much means to take time to our key speakers. So once again, have a very successful event, and I'm looking forward to have events like this throughout the year on similar topics, and to hear a variety of different opinions. All the best from my side.
Thank you very much to the two distinguished guests who welcomed us now. I think we can start the discussion. So I give the floor to Professor Topuzovska Latkovic.
Thank you, Jovan. Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to the round table, Ethics in Business and Policy Making. I will moderate this event today and we'll be hearing from two expert speakers on this subject. The audience is invited to ask questions for the speakers or write comments down in the chat box, and we will discuss them later in the question and answer period after the presentations. In this occasion, I would like to thank EUMMAS for this initiative, invitation, and collaboration. Now I'm happy to welcome Professor Mirjana Borota Popovska and Professor Vesna Zabijakin Chatleska, who will share their knowledge, experience, and research results about this significant and ever-challenging topic. I'm very glad that these special guests are also my dear co-workers from our Department for Organizational and Sciences at the Institute. So we can start now. Professor Mirjana, you are an author of a book about business ethics, which was published almost 20 years ago. And recently you were engaged as an external consultant who held trainings about ethics and anti-corruption to the Macedonian high-level government representatives, which are the main policy and decision makers in the country. So please tell us more about business ethics and why do you personally consider it as so important?
Thank you, Marija. Let me put my presentation with you, so it will be easier for all of us to follow my presentation. So, dear participants, it is my great pleasure that to be part of this event, and I hope that I can contribute to raise awareness for this topic. I'm very certain that all of us agree that business ethics and ethics in policy making are important, but very neglected, especially in Western Balkan countries. So the support for this statement are a lot of corruption scandals that we are facing daily. So that's why the topic of my presentation would be how to improve ethics in business and policy making. First of all, shortly definition about ethics. Ethics consists of the standards of behavior to which we hold ourselves in our personal and professional lives. It establishes the level of honesty, empathy, trustworthiness, and other virtues by which we hope to identify our personal behavior and our public reputation. When we become part of some organization, then we bring our professional part of the society that we are existing. So all of these aspects are creating organizational ethics. And that's why the question is, should we care about ethics in our lives, in our practice, in business and the profession? That is the central question of this presentation that we will examine. And my goal is then why the answer is the standards of for morality, right and wrong conduct in business. Business ethics is a study of good and evil, right and wrong, and just and unjust actions in business. It comprises principles, values, and standards that guide behavior in the world of business. What is right and wrong in making good managers' decisions should involve integration of 3 points of view: the economics, the legal, and the moral. From the economics point of view, managers have to make economically sound business decisions. The purpose of any business organization is to produce goods and services within the greatest efficiency. From the legal point of view, in making business decisions, managers must consider applicable laws. So, but behaving ethically requires more than we meet mandatory standards of the law. It's not enough. Companies today need to be focused not only on complying with the letter of the law, but also on going above and beyond the basic mandatory requirements to consider their stakeholders and to do especially what is right. And from the moral point of view, sometimes the economic and the legal background are not enough to make right business decision, especially when we are aware that this decision can make harm somebody or can make a damage. So many of the moral dilemma facing managers result from conflicts between ethical demands of the roles that they have in an organizations and their personal beliefs. And this dilemma usually leads to unethical business practices. So I will mention a few. Manipulation and exploitation of employees, bending the company rules, misleading consumers with false claim, using customer data inappropriately, unfair competitive practices, unethical treatments to suppliers, harming the environment, manipulating financials, striving to get a favorable deal. And according to the global business ethics, more than 1 in every 5 employees feel pressure to compromise their organizational ethics standards, policies, or break the law. So this percent is quite high. In North America, 31% are bending the company or rules or breaking the laws. The 23% are in Europe, Asia, Pacific, and the global media are 22%. So this is one argument plus one. Business ethics is very important for our society. The pressure to bend the rules in the workplace can be caused by the various factors such as pressure to meeting performance goals, attempting to save one's own and others' jobs, supervisory pressure, advancing one's career or financial interest, and demands from people who support or invest in the organization. Again, according to Global Business Ethics Survey, result from 2020, it shows that employees who feel pressure are about 2 times as likely to observe various types of misconduct. So this is a very, how to say, stressful argument that I'm having here, that 25% incidents are of abusive behavior. Abusive behavior is intimating or creates a hostile work environment. So when there is a pressure, this abusive behavior doubles within organization. Then conflict of interest, it's 27%. That is decisions or actions to benefit the employee, friends, family over the interests of on organization. Corruption is the other interest of ethical misconduct. The abuse of entrusted power for private gain. If we can see here, the percent is 19%. Discrimination or actions against employees based on race, sex, age, religion, sexual orientation, or similar categories. Then sexual harassment, unwelcome sexual advices, requests for sexual favors, other verbal or physical harassment of a sexual nature, or offensive remarks about the person's sex. The other one is violation on health or safety regulation. So this is these are a quite large percentage of misconduct that are in the business world. So that's why the nature of the business ethics is twofold. The one side is the specific situation in which ethical controversy or ethical dilemma arise, and the other concerns the principle of behavior by which it is appropriate to abide. So when we are talking about ethical dilemma, I will mention a few. For example, you're a purchase manager in your company and you are offered money from sales representative if you buy his or her product. You know that this product has some shortcomings that will bring small losses in the production process. There is nothing about this in company rule books or in the law, so you are not breaking the law or the company rules. But the questions remains. The decision is up to you. Would you buy the product, even that you know that there is shortcomings in this product and that will influence on losses in productions? Let us imagine another scenario. You are working for a company which persistently ignores safety procedures. You have drawn the manager's attention to the problem repeatedly, but nothing has been done. Since the problem cannot be settled within the firm, perhaps it could be settled by going outside. Should you blow the whistle? By going to the press, or should you do nothing, taking the view that it is management responsibility? Or the other scenario, you own a business. It will bring your company a lot of savings if you throw the toxic waste in the neighboring river. No one will know, and there is no way that authorities can catch you. What will you do? These are very small amount of ethical dilemma that business persons employees are facing daily in their working lives. So the other aspect is how to resolve them or what to do with them. This is the question of the ethical theory, or simply saying we cannot judge what we ought to do unless we first know the moral principles which we should bring to bear, or set or moral principles that guide the company's conduct. There are principles govern every aspect of the company operation, including its interaction with the government, other businesses, treatment of employees, relationship with the customers. Whenever any ethical dilemmas or controversy arise, a business reference this foundational principle to help resolve those situations. So these are the two main fields of the nature of business ethics, and this should be involved in the code of ethics or ethical practices within the companies. But also, we should mention here factors that influence the ethical behavior. There are a lot of them, but the interplay of 5 major ethics metrics are tied to the daily micro decisions employees make with respect to how they behave in the workplace. These are ethical culture strength, pressure to compromise ethical standards, observation of misconducts, reporting misconducts, and retaliation or revenge perceived by employees after they report misconduct. So, how to improve ethics in business? The question is, we should create ethics program. This ethics program will strengthen the ethical culture. According to Department, a complete ethics program should touch on all of the business function. That includes operation, human resources, management, marketing, and so on. And the global research company Gartner advised companies to integrate their ethics programs with the business operation. This is very important. In doing so, this can maximize the program's impact by making ethical process part of the employee's workflow. According to Gartner, an ethics program should define the program mandate, mitigate and monitor risk, establish policies and procedures, oversee allegation of misconduct, provide training and communications, reinforce behavioral expectation, manage the function of behavioral ethics, and create workable code of ethics. All of these are to the one of this aim of corporate ethics program is to make people more aware about the moral complexity and hard choice. As an argument for this statement are the latest findings from the Global Integrity Report for 2022 that 70% of board members are ready to ignore unethical conduct of their suppliers, distributors, or other parties in order to improve their own career progression or remuneration packages. 15% are ready to falsify financial records. 18% are ready to mislead external parties such as auditors or regulators. So corporations should establish business ethics to promote integrity among their employees and gain trust from their stakeholders, such as investors and consumers. But what is the general benefit of ethics programs? It helps employees to act with integrity. Integrity means a unity between what we say and what we do. And this is highly valued trait. But it is more than just consistency of the character. Acting with integrity means we adhere strongly to the code of ethics, so it implies trustworthiness and incorruptibility. Being a professional of integrity means consistently serving to be the best person you can be in all your interaction with the others. And integrity in business brings many advantages, not the least of which is that it is a critical factor in allowing business and society to function properly. And this is, I think, very important. And one more argument that is going in line with this statement from the Global Integrity Report, in spite of increasing acknowledgement of the importance of the integrity to the reputation and to the employee retention, the incidence of significant fraud show no downward trend over the 14 years. And it is, I think, very disaster fact here that even in the most critical year in 2020, when the COVID crisis was, this fraud incident rise on 18%. So I think that we must stress that business ethics is very important, because we are not going in the right direction. So what about the public sector ethic? When we are talking about public sector ethic, the core values and behavioral standards expected of state employees, both in the civil service and in the elected public office. This is the public sector ethics. Ethical behavior is essential in this part of our society, as the violation of ethical norms bring public offices into disrupt. Once public trust in the ethical standards of public officials disappears, the moral authority to govern crumbles and democratic governance falters. So public servants are assigned authority to implement laws and public policies, govern statuses, and provide services to the public. The abuse of this entrusted power to further private interests is, according to Transparency International, the very definition of corruption. And as we can see nowadays, this is on the top list on the problems that we are facing as a state from the Western Balkans. So what we need is a good governance. And what is the good governance? There is no internationally agreed definition of good governance, but it may span the following topics: the rule of law, effective participation, multi-actor partnership, political pluralism, transparent and accountable processes and institutions, efficient and effective public sector, legitimacy, access to knowledge, information and education, political empowerment of people, equity, sustainability, and attitudes and values that foster responsibility, solidarity, and tolerance. The fundamental function of good governance in the public sector is to ensure that entities achieve their intended outcomes while acting in the public interest all the time. And acting in the public interest requires behaving with integrity, demonstrating strong commitment to the ethical values, and respecting the rule of law. And the second, ensuring openness and comprehensive stakeholders' engagement. So the attributes of good government are prescribed from the United Nations, Council of Europe, and more or less they are the same. They cover issues such as ethical conduct, rule of law, efficiency, effectiveness, transparency, sound financial management, and accountability. And the basic intention is to make a better society for all, and actually to assure that the corruption is minimized. From the Council of Europe, there are a lot of guidelines and toolkits that can help local authorities and some central authorities in living up to this principle and this delivering better service to the citizens. There are also standards and guidelines for public sector ethics. I will mention the few basic. That is United Nations Convention Against Corruption, adopted by United Nations General Assembly in 2003, includes key provisions on codes of conduct, conflict of interest, and assets disclosure as way of combating corruption. So very important organization is Transparency International. It has a lot of works, papers, toolkits, and so on. I will mention now the research paper, Integrity of Public Official in EU countries, International Norms and Standards from 2015. So the next one is OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. This is very interesting recommendation for improving ethical conduct in the public service, including principles for managing ethics in the public service from 1998. And very important in nowadays is the Group of State Against Corruption, or shortly GRECO. which objective is to improve the capacity of its members to fight corruption by monitoring their compliance with the Council of Europe anti-corruption standards through a dynamic process of mutual evaluation of peer pressure. It helps to identify deficiencies in national anti-corruption policies, prompting the necessary legislative, institutional, and practical reform. GRECO also provides a platform for the sharing of best practices in the prevention and detection of corruption. So these are the very important standards and guidelines that can help to improve public sector ethics. But the main concern of public sector ethics is to build a culture of integrity in the public sector. But this is not an easy job. Officials must learn to appropriately manage competing loyalties to the state, to the current government, their institution, and their public duties, and their own private interests. It requires good standards, clear standards that or rules of the game. So it requires understanding that ethics is one of the pillars to develop the democratic governance. So it requires core values that will come from the law, constitution, organizational mission, government policy, culture. It requires knowledge about conflicting values and how to overcome these objectives. And it requires skills of judgments and justification of action, especially on judgment and justification or unjustification on unethical actions. So, as a conclusion, why business and public sector should follow ethics? First of all, it prevents harms to the society. It's very important. Improves profitability, foster business relation and employee productivity, reduce criminal penalties, reduce corruption, protects from unscrupulous employees and competitors, acts as an insurance, facilitates leadership in a globalized environment, contribute to the employee commitment, and ethical conduct result in shareholders' loyalty. And when we are speaking about public entities, voters' loyalty, and can contribute to success that supports even broader social causes and concerns. And according to the 2018 Global Business Ethics Survey, employees are more likely to apply ethical reasoning when their company clearly demonstrates why business ethics is important. 99% of US employees who experience a strong ethic culture said that they are prepared to handle ethical issues. Companies that advocate for business ethics motivate their employees to perform their roles with integrity. So I hope that I contribute a little to answer the question why we should care about business ethics and why business ethics is important. Thank you very much for your attention. So I think that we are going to have time to discuss further. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Professor Mirjana. Professor Vesna, you were recently a member and a co-author in a research project about corporative social responsibility practices in Western Balkan. Can you please tell us more about this concept? How is it related to business ethics and organizational policies?
Thank you, Marija. I hope you listen. It's okay.
Yeah, everything's fine.
I will start my presentation, my paper, with some historical perspective of the business ethics and corporate social responsibility. And then I will touch some ethical dilemmas in decision-making processes in business, some concrete questions, some ethical questions, which we can answer together later in the discussion. A predominant viewpoint of the 1960s is the one that the companies must be interested in a wide set of issues regarding the society, for example, politics, well-being of the community, well-being of the employees, and education. Therefore, the just behavior of business is set as an imperative similar to the just behavior of every citizen. In 1953, Howard Jovan considers that social responsibility refers to the obligation of businessmen and businesswomen to pursue those policies, to make those decisions, or to follow those lines of action which are desirable in terms of the objectives and values of our society. As a response to the growing social issues, Jovan suggests organizational principles such as changes in the corporation composition of the management boards, greater representation of the social positions in management, usage of social revision, social education of the managers, development of ethical codes of conduct, and further research in the social sciences. In that period, the concept of the ethical responsibility was developed based on the premise that several hundreds of the largest companies of that time represent serious centers of power and decision-making, so their economic activities directly affect the lives of citizens. The interest of the ethical responsibility of companies in the 1960s is a result of the growing interest in social awareness, as well as the emergence of the social movements for environment protection and human and workers' rights. The social context is marked by public protest, mainly about human and citizen rights, and anti-war protests led by students and political activists. The protests were primarily aimed at changing the current establishment and changing the business behavior of the corporation that were considered part of that establishment. The strongest pressure was on the banking sector and financial institutions in the United States, but also on large corporations, especially those connected to the military interventions. One such example is the one about the allegation toward the biggest napalm production company, Dow Chemical Company, which napalm was used in the Vietnam War. New opportunity in society requires a different approach for companies. They were forced to incorporate the demands of modern society in the corporate decisions and activities, besides the direct economic and technical interests. Social, economic, and political changes have put pressure on companies to reconsider their ethical responsibility and their social role, considering that the social responsibility of business people should be proportional with their social power. The corporate social responsibility will be the basis on which the topic of business ethics and corporate citizenship will emerge in 1890s. Business ethics and stakeholder theory will establish themselves as alternative concepts that attract attention and become relevant both for academic debate and for the business people. It is the time when public opinion turns against large corporations as a result of report of ethical scandals and managerial and corporate wrongdoings. Simultaneously, what dominates the public discourse are the issues of the environment pollution, abuse of the consumers, employment discrimination, security and health of the employees, the quality of work life, and suspicious business practices of the multinational corporations. All these ethical issues and demands will later transform into laws, which will demand additional ethical responsibility from the managers and appropriate corporate response. In the 1990s, the business ethics theory, the corporate citizenship theory, and the stakeholder theory become the central topics. In the essence of the business ethics is the opinion that the company identifies as a citizen, as a member of a larger community, and it cannot exist outside of that community. According to Solomon, corporations, like individuals, are part of the communities that create them, and the responsibilities they bear are not a product of argument or implicit contracts, but intrinsic to their existence as social entities. Business ethics is setting the ethical responsibility as an important component of the social responsibility of the companies. The ethical behavior is not a product of the legal norms, but of the moral norms for justice in the society. It encompasses policies that should be the company's response to the expectation of the community or society at large, that are not legally required. Business ethics is supposing a behavior which is above existing laws, but is considered as right and acceptable, and as such, it can anticipate the future laws. Some ethical dilemmas in decision-making in businesses. The economic activity of the companies take place in interaction with diverse groups of stakeholders. The company's engagement in various transactions and exchange raises many ethical questions. What follows is the elaboration of some important issues regarding the ethical responsibility of the companies. The first one, employer-employee relations. The interdependence of the employer and the employees is complex, and it is based on relations which are regulated by law, but at the same time are conditioned by the human resource policies of the company, as well as the perception, values, and beliefs of the workers. Ethical responsibilities go beyond legal requirements, and in that sense, the employer can use its discretionary rights in making employee relation policies. At the same time, the workers also, who rent their labor, have the discretionary rights to decide how much effort they will put into their work and how much of the competencies they possess will be used to contribute to the success of the company. There are questions that open up ethical dilemmas on both sides, on the side of the employers and on the side of the employees. Many important ethical challenges affect company policies and practices. They can be located in the domain of hiring and firing, the compensation system, meaningful work, unpaid overtime, whistleblowing, and so on. On this occasion, we will look at some of them. When it comes to employment decision, many issues related to employers' discriminatory practices become ethically important, but also ethically ambiguous. The laws provide protection against discrimination and equal opportunities for all in the labor market. But even so, certain moral questions remain open to debate. Hence, the question is, what employment policies and what criteria does the company consider ethically right and just when making employment decisions? From the company standpoint, the employment criteria are based on the job relevance. Ethical dilemmas arise when a certain applicant who has the best qualification for the job is not suitable for the job position because other job relevant criteria prevail in the decision of who to hire. Let us suppose, for example, that a micro or a small enterprise prefers employing men, not women, guided by the assumption that women with children would be absent from work more often and would require paid sick leave in case of the child's sickness. What is relevant in this case is the criteria not to be absent from work due to enterprise's capability to provide substitution for the absent worker. On the other hand, this is completely wrong for the employer to set gender as a criteria. This kind of gender-related discrimination is not stated in a company's policy, but it is the owner's discrete right. Another example is the following. A small business owner decides to hire his son instead of the most qualified candidate for the job. Is in this case the criterion for hiring the most qualified worker unjustified? Or when the hiring company gives priority to the children of retired workers who are qualified for the job over other qualified applicants? Has the company committed a moral injustice and violated the ethical principle of equal rights and opportunities for all? Is such a policy justified as a method for stimulating the job commitment and loyalty of the other employees? What policies should the company follow in case the line between what is ethical and what is unethical is blurred? Now I will say something about compensation. Many external economic and social factors shape the compensation system. Companies are forced to balance such external factors, for example, competitive industry wages, minimum wages, and company interest and possibilities. Pay and reward policies are the subject of moral consideration and ethical dilemmas. From the business ethic standpoint, special attention is given to two extremes: the compensation of CEOs and compensation of the lowest paid factory workers. CEOs' large compensation packages are justified by their rare and highly valued skills and contributions to the company. And this view is so-called contribution view in management. In this case, the company's policy is reflecting the stance that compensation should be evaluated not only as a problem of justice, but as an incentive. On the other side of the extreme are the low-paid factory workers in developing countries. Low wages are the result of company policies that are based on the belief that a just wage is of whatever wage the employer and the employee agree to without force or fraud. This view represents the agreement view. The dilemma is how far these company policies can be considered morally unacceptable and ethically unjustified. Clients and customers. The basic of the economic activity of companies is the sale of products and services to customers. Several ethical dilemmas are associated with this interaction. For example, product or service safety, advertising, and pricing. The first ethical question is, how safe is the product being sold? Certain products or services may pose a risk and cause harmful consequences to customers. Government agencies are responsible for establishing regulation and minimum standards that products must meet, as well as assessing the safety of the products. The second ethical question is, who is responsible and who bears the cost of the damage? Should manufacturers be held responsible for the possible harm their product would cause and not really morally responsible for that harm? How fair would it be for customers to bear the cost of product damage if they were not morally to blame for that damage? Companies must respond to these questions with appropriate organizational policies that will incorporate the ethical component and find the most efficient and fair way of allocating costs. In advertising, the subject of ethical scrutiny is the possible deception that is marketed through the creation of false beliefs. The ethical question is, what can be considered deceptive and manipulative advertising? To what extent does the advertisement create a false and unreasonable belief among customers? What is the target population and how much the claims made in the ad lead the population to believe? The answer to this would be company policies that should ensure, firstly, the customers will not be harmed. For example, that they will buy a product that is the object of their needs and desire. And secondly, the customer's trust and company reputation will not be damaged. Moreover, companies should be especially careful in creating special marketing policies when it comes to advertising aimed at a population that is prone to irrational choices, such as children, young people, or vulnerable groups. At the basis of the market economy is the assumption that the prices of products and services are formed by the market as a relationship between the force of supply and demand. A market economy is based on the premise that the free market dictates the prices. But what if the relationship between supply and demand of products or services is distorted and abused by a company which creates higher prices flexibly? Such are the examples of monopolistic action in the sense of capturing the majority of the market share, even in the presence of anti-monopoly regulations and laws. Another unethical behavior of companies is the use of emergency situation when certain products or services become necessary. When we can mention several examples of unethical behavior during the COVID pandemic. The sale of protective face masks. The government prescribed mandatory wearing of masks both in open and closed spaces, without intervening by limiting the sales price of the face mask. The companies have taken advantage of that and used that moment to increase the price multiple times. Second, extremely high prices of services in the private medical institution, hospital, or medical labs, in situation when the state did not have enough capacity to meet the citizens' health needs, but at the same time did not react timely through the state interventionism to regulate the service prices. These examples confirm that the case of exploitation, A, extract an excessive benefit out of B, in circumstances in which B cannot reasonably refuse A's offer. Cited from Waldman. And finally, the companies and the society. Corporate social responsibility has become an important topic among academics in the business world and among wider public sphere as well. Today's ethical standards in society require that companies, in addition to fulfilling their economic responsibilities by producing goods and services and by providing jobs, should also help solve some social problems by engaging in activities beneficial to society. Various stakeholders, the company's employees, the local community, and the entire society can benefit from this kind of activities. The ethical principles for responsible company behavior are in the basis of the corporate social responsibility. As it was previously elaborated, the business ethics is equally incorporated into the 4 categories of the corporate social responsibility: economical, legal, ethical, and philanthropic responsibilities. Of course, it is clear that the companies are obligated to be responsible social actors and good corporate citizens. The question that we need to ask today is, to what extent should we allow the corporations to affect society and to decide to whom and about what they will provide any form of assistance, having in mind their huge economic and social power to influence the society? Brinker thinks it is a mistake to encourage firms to engage in corporate social responsibility. When we do so, he says, we see the portion of the public sphere to private actors. Instead of deciding together how we want to ameliorate social ills affecting our fellow community members, we leave it up to private organizations to decide what to do. Instead of sharpening our skills of democracy through deliberation and collective decision-making, and reaffirming social bonds through mutual aid, we allow our skills and bonds to atrophy through disuse. And finally, the relationship between government and companies. Very short. We can discuss this later. Companies can also use their resources to influence the government, namely to influence the processes of making laws and regulations. This type of corporate political activity can be manifested through various activities, such as working directly with the government in the form of a public-private partnership, support candidates for election, contributing to political campaigns, lobbying government officials, defend position in public debate, even the executives or owners of the big company to become the government officials. Of course, the relationship between government and business is an important one, and expertise in a field can be valuable for the both sides. However, this collaboration should be transparent and subject to public scrutiny. So this is all for me. I hope that I was successful in raising some questions about and some dilemmas, some ethical dilemmas about about the relationship with the customers, with the clients, with employees, with government, and so on. So thank you for the patience. I'm ready for debate now.
Thank you very much, Professor Vesna, for your presentation. I hope that our listeners were inspired by both presentations and that they have provoked many questions or have offered some solutions to existing problems or dilemmas. We are still waiting for some interesting questions in the chat box. And I will now ask two questions. Professor Mirjana, what do you think? Can ethics be taught? And which could be the key learning outcomes of a business ethics training program?
Thank you, Marija, for the question. Yes, the answer is the ethic can be teach or taught, or it can be learned. But the second part of the answer is we do not have to expect the instant results or instant solution of this problem, because as I mentioned before, the ethics training programs should be part of the bigger holistic ethics program that each organization should try to implement within their workflow processes. So in order to have a good ethic program, we should have to take, or we always take one basic aim, and that is to improve the professionalism of our employees. And when we are talking about the professionalism, we can start from the point of view of developing the competencies for how to develop the competencies for the ethics behavior. And usually, we are talking, when we are talking about the competencies, we are talking about knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And more of the time, we put on the aspect of knowledge and skills, but less time on attitude. So the most important part here, when we are trying to develop the ethical competencies, is to develop the part of the attitudes. But what would be one ethical competencies that we are going to try to develop? The first aspect is respecting the rules of the work or the laws. So knowing the laws, knowing the rules who are closely connected with the job. And the second aspect would be to develop the moral conscience, or the moral awareness about the moral, the core values that one should follow. And the other aspect is developing the moral reasoning. So the moral reasoning consists of moral argumentation, basic rules, the aspect of consequences of some actions for the organization or for herself or himself. And the second and the highest level of developing the moral competencies is moral motivation and developing the moral motivation and moral character. So knowledge that his or her position or his or her action can lead not to the damage only for the organization, but maybe to the damage to the whole society, and to have autonomy to bring the decisions beside maybe sometimes the rules or the laws there within the organization or within the society. So these are the basic aspect of developing the moral competencies within developing the professionalism for our employees. And as I said before, it should be part of the bigger picture when we are creating these ethics programs. when we establish policies and procedures, when we oversee allegations of misconduct, when we reinforce behavior expectation, manage the function of on behavior ethics, and create a workable code of ethics. So when I said creating the workable code of ethics, it means what are the core values of the organization, what are the main problems of the organization or main dilemma, ethical dilemma that people are facing with, and what are the maybe some rules, regulation, or advices how to avoid this ethical dilemma or ethical misconduct, and what is the office or the person where they can address to gain the help. So this is just a small part of good ethical training, and as I say, it should be part of the bigger picture when we are trying to import ethical conduct within a day-to-day workflow. So I hope I answered this question.
Thank you very much for your explanations. It was clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Professor Vesna, how much the companies are interested in doing business in socially responsible manner, and how much they are incorporating the ethical principles into their business strategies, as well as in their organizational policies and decision-making processes?
So we can point to an example from the Macedonian companies. The last year, the Department of Organizational Science at the Institute of Sociological, Political, and Juridical Research conducted research on the topic of corporate social responsibility in Macedonian companies. The research was conducted by the research team member Professor Borota Popovska, Professor Topuzovska Latkovic, Professor Vesna Zabijakin Chatleska, and Assistant Blažijo. The aim of the research was to determine the extent to which corporate social responsibility is incorporated into the economic activities of companies operating in Macedonia. Online desk research was used as a method, and through content analysis of the website and virtual documents of the companies, it was investigated how they incorporate and practice the principles of corporate social responsibility at the level of the organizational strategy and policy. 17 companies were identified for which content analysis was done. All companies are renewed and successful Macedonian companies that achieve significant economic results. These companies belong to different economic sectors like banking, insurance, pharmaceutical and chemical industry, confectionery, telecommunication, retail, oil industry, metallurgy, and concrete production. It was analyzed, first, whether companies have emphasized corporate social responsibility on their website. Second, whether the corporate social responsibility statement is an integral part of their organizational documents. And third, to whom or what their activities are aimed at. Research findings reveal that the activities undertaken by companies in the area of the corporate social responsibility are aimed at 4 categories. First, environment and ecology. Second, the wider and local community. Special focus on health and educational institutions, as well as in the spheres such as culture, art, and sports. Third, internal and external stakeholders like employees, suppliers, consumers, clients, business partners, socially vulnerable groups, and fourth, the society as a whole. The results indicate that the company's activities are mostly directed toward internal and external stakeholders, employees, suppliers, consumers, clients, business partners, and socially vulnerable groups, and toward the environment, and at least toward the local community. Nearly 80% of the companies have an explicit definition and description of their corporate social responsibility policy on their websites. The corporate social responsibility statement is usually an integral part of the annual report. The research indicates that Macedonian companies have made significant progress in the implementation of corporate social responsibility. They recognize the need for corporate social responsibility and the potential it has for improving economic results and also the company reputation. This is the research that we conduct last year. This is only some part of the findings that we reveal in this occasion. So we can conclude that Macedonian companies is working on their corporate social responsibility, and we can say that the biggest Macedonian companies put a lot of attention to this topic and do it on a strategically important way.
Thank you very much, Professor Vesna, for sharing the findings and answering this question. We have one question in the chat box, so I would like to invite Rashid Khalid to read his question aloud, please. Or I can read it instead. The question is, what will be the best practices in terms of ethical adaptation in education? If you have some idea about this question, I don't know if the question is clear enough. I would like to invite Mr. Rashid Khalid to clear this question about what kind of ethical adaptation do you mean? We have one more question from Janka Taboretska. I don't know if I pronounce okay. What the companies, corporations are doing in case when the interests of various stakeholders are in conflict. For example, shareholders or customers.
Maybe I can specify the question more, because I was thinking about social media, like Facebook, for example, that and it's sometimes companies are using corporate social responsibility as like they adopted it, and it means that it's some PR for them. But when it comes to the reality, it happens that, for example, in case of Facebook, the huge engagement within discussions and so on brings the value for the shareholders. But on the other side, for the customers and even for the whole society, it's not healthy, because what ensures that engagement is usually the toxic content and hoaxes, and it makes the society even more polarized. So now the question is that can we speak about social responsibility of these corporations or not? Or is it just enough if they sponsor some, I don't know, charity, or they claim something and it looks nice on their website, but the reality can be different? So what are your experiences with this?
Thank you very much.
So it is an interesting question. It is the question, how to say, it's not that it firstly happens. It's always arise that problem in business, as I said, from the 3 levels of business ethics, where it comes from the dilemma, the legal, the economics, and the moral. And from the economics aspect, they are doing very well, and they are ethically and social and responsible, but only in this case toward the stockholders or toward the creating the profit. So this is this how to say blur view of the businesses that they have. The profit is the ethical how to say only ethical aspect of our work, but when you are not having in mind the bigger picture, and that is as you mentioned, the good of society, and what are the implication of the actions that our products or services has or influence the society, then you have this ethical improvement only with inside your organization, you know. But according to the social contract, that we are all aware that when you are doing something within the society, you should come back with a good for this society. So there is when becomes this social responsibility aspect, and literally all in all, they are very responsible for the implication that their actions has in the society. And what should be the curative here? Maybe the pressure from the society. It's the most how to say effective aspect that force the organization to act ethically. For example, we have a lot of affairs when organization like Nike or so on used inappropriate labor force, so the people stopped buying their products. So maybe this kind of pressure from the society should how to say come in mind this organization to be more social responsible and not to create some context that can harm the society. So this is the one way of pressure of the society. But the other way, it's, and this is very important part, is the education of the managers. So the education of the managers and the education of the employees. That's why business ethics is very important for the employees to have a courage to rise this kind of practices publicly, to blow the whistle, and for the managers not to force or not to motivate this kind of activities, or to recognize this kind of activities that are not good for the society. So this is the small part of the answer of your question, but considering everything, I think we are in the good line.
Thank you very much. I completely agree. Maybe I would add just the pressure of the stronger regulation, maybe even on a global level. This is also the tool, but it's difficult to ensure. Maybe within the country, it's simpler in comparison with some like global legislation, but it is realized. And what you said, I experienced in one of my research. I'm dealing with implementation of biometric technologies in various sectors, and especially facial biometrics when it comes to personal data, privacy, abuse of this data, and so on. It's very like sensitive. And I did a research on more than 500 companies, and one question was devoted to how they like consider importance of like commercial effects and benefits in comparison with some ethical aspects, something about the legislation. So how much they care for these both aspects. And it was very interesting that the answers were exactly 50-50%, that like they treat them equally. But when I looked deeper into the data, and there was the question on which level of engagement and adoption of these technologies are in your company, and we found out statistical dependence. So it means that if these companies were in that like further stage of that implementation, or even they had them in their company already implemented, for them commercial benefits were like of higher importance. So and that ethical aspects were less important. So it was like when they just when some companies just theoretically should claim or say, yes, of course, we have the ethical concerns. It's just not just about the commercial benefits. We want to behave ethically. So when it costs nothing, they will declare in that survey that, yeah, we care about that. But when it comes like to the reality, so then the ethics fails more in comparison with the profits and so on. So yeah, but as you said, there are some solutions and they should be implemented. Thank you very much for very interesting and necessary topics that you raised today. It's very, very necessary.
Yes, and your findings are very interesting, and they are in line with the Global Business Ethics Survey, as I mentioned it before. People are still very, very prepared to make fraud and to neglect some of the rules and regulations that are maybe unethical and do the unethical actions, unfortunately.
Thank you very much, Professor and Yanka, for your question. Do we have...
Marija, this is Rashid. Yeah, I know that you were asking at that time. I was just busy with one of the internal call. Can I ask my question in
Yes,
a relevant way?
Please. Please.
Okay, actually the scenario which I was discussing or wanted to ask is related with the educational industry. Usually we have seen in the world that now education industry has more been commercialized. The practices which we have seen, especially between the private sector and the government sector, and there is a big difference between the quality and the standards as well. I'm not talking about the European side, but I'm talking about the Asian perspective as well. Some of the practices which are been done, especially in terms of the ethical dilemma is there, I would say rather, is that the practices which are been adopted over there are not in favor of the students. Knowledge has been gone out, and only the concern is more of the thesis being taken, the deliverance of the education is in terms of only commercialization, rather than it should be on the knowledge base and making sure that the student should have some ethical values to be taken once they'll be graduating. So what we are producing at this moment as a young generation who's been coming out as a graduates are not fit in with the society as well in total. What is missing is they've been more inclined towards the other things other than the making their career. They're more inclined towards quick ways to reach out to their careers rather than step-by-step processes. This is one. Another thing is the universities which are imparting knowledge are no more imparting knowledge. They are more into the commercial side, having more numbers to be taken care of, rather than considering the quality and the standards in their institutions. That is where my question is: what is the best practices we can adopt in making ethical perspective to be clear in making the standards, the quality assurance, which can be the first priority for any institute rather than the commercial aspects.
Thank you. Yes. Are there these results from some research study, or it is your perception about this condition?
No, obviously I'm working in the university and I have a very like 18-20 years of my experience, and I've been going through both the side, not only teaching, research, but also on the practical side where I've been working, doing the marketing side of the university as well. And there I have many good experiences where I've seen that the private sector is more inclined of every day the numbers of the students, how many numbers we can gather, how many students can be brought in so that the fees are increased for no reason. And there who is suffering is actually the student. And on the other side, the students' quality had not been mapped up with what the market has been asking. So there is, it is not on the parity. Means everything is now on the scale, if we see, is not manageable, or either we can say not in the balanced situation.
Yes, I understand your point. Thank you very much. Do professors have something to answer to this question or to share some thought, opinion regarding this issue?
I think that Mr. Rashid Khalid is totally right. More or less, this situation is happening even in maybe Asia, Europe, USA. The profit is something that is leading us all. And when you are thinking only on profit, then there are less opportunities to be ethical, you know, in your intention and your action. So when we are going, when we make a king of the profit, when we make the profit king, and that is a not good sign for the society, you know, especially in education. Because those are the generation who are going to be engineers, educators, doctors, and so on. So what we are producing is sometimes maybe disaster for the future. But I hope that some regulation can do the better, or can improve the situation, the regulation from the state normally, and networking is very important for the education and for the research. Then there we put a higher standard on our research and our outcomes that we should give to our students and so on. But really, it can. It is the situation I think that the whole world is facing. It is a bit of devastation of the moral values that we are facing in nowadays. I cannot give you. Yeah. I cannot give you the concrete.
Yeah, I can understand. Just the last submission for all the delegates is that unfortunately the educational sector, which was earlier been with the educationalists, has now been shifted to the businessman. And the businessman is running it as a business, and he needs the numbers, he needs the profits more as towards the ethical side of delivering back to the society. That is why we don't have education for all. It's now education for only selected people. So that is how the money has rotated up, that our child who's been coming up right from the kindergarten till the university, parents have a big dilemma of paying up a high fees, and at the end they are not sure which particular career or which particular future they are buying from the market. I would say not the university, but a market. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Also, if I may add something, I think that in nowadays, in the liberal economy that we live in, the university professors become, and the pressure from the society to the university professor to become an entrepreneur. So we must have a lot of students. We must doing everything we could to ensure to enroll enough students at the university, to be not so rigid in examination and so on. Because to chase to some projects on a market base, so it seems that things changes a lot from the past. Whether it's good or not, we're discussing it now, but I think it's not good because, for example, our institute is established to do some service and public opinion polls for the government, for making some policies, public policies, and so on. So what's the point? What is the goal now? Whether to work for the society or whether to work for the profit of the institute. So we become more and more entrepreneurs and maybe less and less university professors. We try not to interrupt our integrity, of course, maximum that we can, but usually, you know, we must adapt sometimes to the situation, and that is very important ethical dilemma and very important ethical questions for us as a university professors and as a researchers also.
Thank you, Professor. Do we have more questions for discussion? There are no more questions.
I have one question.
Okay, please, Professor Pande.
Thanks. I must say that I'm proud that I'm affiliated with this institute for almost 40 years or something. And obviously this discussion is clearly stating about the quality and in-depth approach of my dear colleagues. Well, let's get back to the question. In the very title, policy making is mentioned. Policy making is highly dependent on the overall political setting, political culture, and everything that determines the environment where the particular policies are developed. And of course, policies, especially that affects economic area, they determine and business approach of different companies. In situation when we have high level of corruption and very fragmented states, if it is possible to call them states, I would ask my colleagues to give their reflection. How is it possible to stick with the standards, with the business standards according to the books, when you have such a quite harsh environment where the companies are working and the business supposed to be done? Thanks.
Thank you, Professor. Is the question clear?
I'm not sure that the question is clear. So you are addressing the public sector within in the relation with the business sector, or I'm not sure what was the question.
Okay, I will rephrase the question. In situation when we have the unfavorable political environment that immediately affects policy-making process that is related to the performance of the business entities, if we're talking about economic policy, fiscal policy, other relevant policies. How is it possible to stick with the norms that you refer to that are pointed in the books, classical books of business?
Sorry, Professor, but we are not stick to that norms. That's why we are discussing these topics very, very eager, you know.
Exactly. Where we are now, how to do business in the area where the actually we're facing completely new world. When we are facing completely a new world. Actually, you said, no, we're not sticking with the books. We're not sticking with the norms of business as described in the classical textbooks in business. But if it is so, how to do business in not business-friendly environment where the political decisions are predominant, not economic logic, but political decisions over the policy-making process, and in second step, directly to development of particular business policies. Is it slightly clear, more clear?
Yes, it is clear, and the answer is how to have a business within these circumstances. It's very hard. It's very hard when the corruption is on so high level. So that's reflects on business, and business pays more. You know, that are hidden costs that we cannot see, but they have a hidden cost. And whenever we have societies that the main of the problems, the main problem is the corruption, then everybody has a problem, not only business. It's very hard to have a business within this kind of societies, you know. And so this is the will of the citizens and the will of the government to work to diminish the corruptive actions, or as we say, as we see nowadays, pressure from other, entities like US, EU, European Union, and so on, that will, I hope, help to raise the awareness of anti-corruption practices within the societies. Yes, it is hard, really. It is hard. So I think that, for example, there's a lot of mechanism in Macedonia, concrete. So we have a very good laws. Macedonia is very highly regulated country, but it is a problem of fulfillment of these laws. You know, sometimes it happens that the laws are for a lot of people are important, but not for those who are in favor. You know, that is the one problem that and that is the source of the corruption. And especially, I think that Macedonia has a lot of laws. My experience is that there is some steps, maybe baby steps, that government would like to fight against the corruption. So they are doing a lot of this ethical standards, improvement of these ethical standards, not only for the state servants, but also for the elective officials. And this is very important because these elective officials has this discrimination, rights that are, only for the officials. I think that these are the baby steps, but you should start somewhere. But in terms of regulation and laws, we are very good in that, you know. And now we miss only the will and the functioning of the institution. As you can see, the judiciary aspect of the institution is very weak. So that is the part that should improve in order to have the laws that will be how to say valid for everyone in the society, not only for those who are not in favor, you know. So I think yes, it's hard. It is hard when you do not have a rule of law. And the first principle everywhere in the United Nations, in the European Union, is the rule of law. The rule of law is very important, and this is the first principle that public servants and public officials, elected public officials, I think of them, that they should be first in front of them and should govern this part of their work.
Many thanks for your answer.
I can add something.
I wanted to add as well.
Professor Borota. The main question is, where is the corruption? Is the corruption in the sphere of public sector or in the private sector? So if we said that the corruption is in public sector, then the private sector must find some ways to deal with the situation in the country, in the economy. And bearing in mind that some corporations have a lot of money and that can be translated into a lot of power. In which way? When some owners, big owners, or big executives trying to achieve some personal or political goals and involving in the political lives, giving some companies money for helping, aiding or aid in the society, or helping to establish some infrastructures. And then executives from private sector leave their jobs to work for the government agencies. This is the link. I think this is important. And this is the topic of the corporate political responsibility. For example, they leave their company's jobs and go to work to the government agencies or as government officials on a high level. And then in that way, they become regulators rather than the regulated. This indicates the potential conflict of interests. As industry executives move to work in government services, get the opportunity to create pro-industry policies, and then return to their higher paying jobs in the private sector. We have that case in Macedonia also recently. So where is the corruption again? Of course, the corruption is in the public sector, but the private sector find a way to make an influence on the governments on very different ways. I just put an example, one of the ways, and get the interest, maybe sometimes for the industry, maybe sometimes for themselves. The both of this is really actually working in our societies. So that is the main question, how to regulate, because ethics, of course, is above regulations. So in the democratic society, we cannot say that some company executive or some owners couldn't have the public attitude, could not involved in the public political activities, because it is democratic right of every citizen. But at the same time, when they use their company resources, sometimes money, sometimes something else, to influence the politicians, or even become politicians themselves for some period of few years, for example, and then back to the companies. That is the problem. That is the big problem. It's not controversy. It's maybe sometimes is not unethical, but the public awareness of this must be on the high level. And we must think about this and make some public pressure. The society must make pressure on this for not to happen. That's my opinion on that.
Thank you, professors, for your interesting points. Maybe these two speakers
just a comment that we are referring to the external factors to regulate the internal circumstances, and from at least from media, not to mention the other sources, it is visible that even the sources of democracy, including the European Union, United States, who knows who else, are not immune on corruption and on misconduct in doing public affairs, at least. So, but it is completely another story, and we could organize a specific roundtable completely focused on this point. Many thanks for your answers, dear colleagues.
Just to add something, you know, we cannot say that we are the same. So there is corruption in Macedonia, and there is corruption also in USA and European Union. Yes, there is corruption, but there is a levels of corruption, you know. So there are a lot of mechanisms that can be put into life. So that can prevent the corruption and to diminish the corruption. And here we miss those of the mechanisms. Yes, and one of them that we miss the most is the good juridical system. So this is maybe something to add.
Thank you. And the sanctions are missing.
Yeah, that's the part of the juridical system.
Thank you all. Do we have more questions, or we can please, Professor Vasic?
Thank you. Professor Marija, you asked if we can bring some solutions. I think we can only make this more complicated than it actually is by its nature. Talking about ethics, I do have one chapter in my lectures tackling ethics and ethical issues. So it's always question number one: what is ethical, and actually who decides what is ethical and what is unethical? Where's that line between those two? And if there are some ethical glasses through which we perceive things and watch things, how my glasses are different from yours or from glasses of other participants here. How cultural differences impact our perception of ethics, of what we say good or bad things, and how our education is connected to that, our origin, let's say. And there is always people who work in the industry, in real sector. They know there is always dilemma, profit versus ethics. So, for example, shall I evade taxes to save money, to gain some more profit, to pay salaries, to raise salaries, or maybe to make the stakeholders more happy, the owners more happy? So you are always dancing on a very tiny line. So my question to myself and to all of you, is it actually normal and expected that we all have different ethical glasses and we see the same things differently? And is it really, because you were talking about training programs, different training programs, is it actually possible to make a unique training program that could be delivered worldwide, all around globe, and be efficient at every point of the planet? So the question is to myself and to anybody who is interested and feels well to.
Thank you, Professor Vasic.
Thank you.
Yes, your question is very philosophical, and it cannot be answered in one sentence. Or
May I say something? I'm with Professor Pande all the time, so we discuss every day a few hours. Maybe because of that, I learned a lot from Professor Pande. That's why.
Yes, maybe it is important to point out this contact that my colleague Vesna was talking about, that when sometimes it happens that capital or profit or money makes the value in the society, you know, by pressuring the government or government officials. And it is very sometimes dangerous part, because if they this money are from the corruptive actions, you know, from the people who stole this money, to be more clear. So what kind of values this person are trying to put on our society? This is one very dangerous situation. And I would not go further in this question, because, you know, as you said, it's always open and can be discussed. The second one about the training, is there a universal training? I mentioned before, we should try to teach our students or our managers or employees how to do the moral reasoning. It's very important, and how to improve their moral conscience. And we hope that on the end we are going to improve their moral motivation and and their moral autonomy. So this is the part that is going to the moral the levels of development of the moral levels development of the person. You know, sometimes the final level nobody reach. Or a little amount of people reach the final level of moral development, and that is the moral autonomy, you know. And most more or less people are doing how they're doing most of the others, you know. And when we are talking about the moral training or ethical training within the firm, so one of the purposes is to have some surveys. What do we need exactly? You know, so this can be what is the general risk assessment, or what is maybe anti-corruption implementation of some anti-corruption plan where we are talking about the public policy. Then some kind of data that we reach from the surveys with the public or with our customers and so on. Some feedback of training needs, or some breaking the regulation, ethical problems that we have before, some others data that we get from, as I said, from our environment and so on. So we modify the training, but the basic of the training is to develop moral conscience, or firstly, to understand what are the rules, to provide the trainees what are the rules and what are the moral rules within the organization that we are decided that they are the core values that are leading us. Second, moral conscience, moral reasoning, and on the end to be, you know, hopelessly that we are going to develop the moral motivation or autonomy, moral autonomy. So this is only small parts that we can intervene. We are not opening there the philosophical discussion. You know, the philosophical discussion are for the forums like this, you know, not within the organization. I hope I answered the question.
Yes, Professor, thank you. I mean, it's hard to answer the question, which is really complex, but you did it well. Maybe, Professor Marija, if you give me just one moment before you continue, so I wouldn't disturb you later on. I would just like to thank all of you for both bodies, the advisory board and honorary board, the presidents, also to all our colleagues from the Institute from Macedonia, for co-hosting this event, also our colleague Dina from Egypt, and all of you who participated today. Very nice speeches, good questions, interesting answers. This is the fourth and the last event before the main event related to our conference that we are going to have in Dubai in February. We started with our research centers sometime in May, if I remember, where our researchers presented their works. Then it followed by Women's Forum. We had a very influential and interesting guest that was sharing her opinion and giving advice to her colleagues. Before this, we had the first youth forum, which was very beautiful, and the children prepared it very well. It's available also on YouTube. You can watch it. And as I said, the last one, the fourth one in this sequence before the main one, the forum, the round table that you organized today is really nice, very useful. I thank you all for this and for all your effort that you put in organizing this event. Thank you once more, and I hope this is not the last one, and Professor Pande and myself will probably get some more complicated questions for next one. Thank you.
We're going to do our best. Congratulations to all.
Yes, so I guess this concludes this round table. I would like to thank all the participants for attending and the productive discussion. We hope you have all learned and enjoyed during this online event. Thank you again, Professor Mirjana Borota Popovska and Professor Vesna Zabijakin Chatleska, for answering all those questions and for the great expositions. It was a pleasure to have you here today. And instead of a closing key message, I would like to use a quote from Potter Stewart, which says, ethics is knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do. Thank you again and take care. I think Jovan Bliznakovski.
Thank you very much also from my side. I think it was a very interesting discussion, and since we spent almost 2 hours here, that means that everything was really good. Thank you to all the speakers and again to Professor Vasic. And I hope that we're going to see each other soon on some other event of the Institute for Sociological, Political, Juridical Research, or on some other event organized by EUMMAS. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good evening.
Bye.